Welcome back to the vile workbench of doom. Today, I got or similared. Nerdgearz, a company you've heard me talk about before. I bought GPUs from them, fans, PSUs, risers. Really had a pretty good experience overall. They got 8 GPU mining cases. As is, where is, $75. I'm like, how could I go wrong? 4 120mm fans, a blade-style CPU compute card. Actually, no, the pictures had a regular riserless motherboard with a built-in flat CPU. This has a riser card CPU in it, but the photos not only showed 4 fans across, it also showed ATX power supply support. So I picked up 2. It said untested, but you know, whatever. $75 shipped. Worth it for the risk. Unfortunately, I got these out of the box. I'm like, oh, that actually doesn't look too bad. Looked it over, opened it up, saw everything, and then I noticed the problem. And I'll open this up, turn it around, and see if you guys notice the problem before I tell you too. But these have a bit of an issue, and I got or similared, like I said, in a way that kind of makes it less useful to me, and I'll explain why. Here's the rear elevation, side elevation, side elevation. This writing is from me. Let me pop the lid off so you can see inside. So this case did not ship with any of these black and yellow wires. I bought these and installed them separately. But maybe you see the problem now, and the problem is there's no room for a power supply in this thing. So what I noticed shortly thereafter was, although I do have some cases where the power supply is able to be pushed in from the side externally, large mining farms, that's actually a pretty critical feature. And why that is, you can have a PSU failure and you don't have to take this off the rack or open it up to replace the PSU and off you go. Unfortunately, what was pictured on their website, and I saved copies of all this, it was an ATX motherboard. So it had a 20-pin connector on it, no 4-pin, and it had a full-size spot in the back for an ATX power supply. Now, you guys know I'm basically a hoarder of hardware right now, so I have 1600 T2 power supplies that I really wanted to use for this project, and unfortunately I can't now. Another caveat to that is, I can't wake alarm when it's powered by PCIe. So this board, although I can issue a wake alarm command to it, it won't actually do anything because it can't shut down the power supply. So whatever, fine, I'll hook it up to one of my new PDUs and I'll have the relays click it on and off. I can handle that. But the fact that it didn't come with any means of powering the GPUs inside struck me as really tacky. 2 out of the 3 fans are bad in each case, but they're not PWM, so you can't speed control them. I wouldn't use them anyway. I'm going to put a much slower speed fan set in there, which you guys will see in just a few moments. And then I'm going to be putting 4 RX 6600s, actually 6 of those, and then 2 6600 XTs in this as well, just to boot it up, see if it mines, and see how the temperatures are. But yeah, venting my first world frustrations on an insanely cheap computer case that probably cost them $30 to ship me, so they made maybe $40 on this thing, but I'm guessing these have had a life, and they've come a long way. Anyway, there's enough of my ranting. I think I'm going to power this with one of my freebie 2000 watt meter box power supplies. I'll show you that in a few moments too, but first things first, let's get these fans out of here. All right, so these 2 actually look okay. The bearings are at least fine. This one though, when I pulled the grill off, she snapped the hub right clear in 2, partner. So that one is garbage. Anyway, there's some nice holes, and I believe these were actually flipped around for the sake of the mining facility that these were clearly in. They probably had the airflow going the other way. I can't think of a single good reason otherwise that they would have the fans blowing out the front, especially if you had GPUs like blowers, where you would just be suffocating them. So I will be putting the fans back in the other way and putting the fan grills on the correct way around. But anyway, there's power button on this case, but since this is a PCIe powered board, there's not even a header for it. Anyway, let's throw in 3 much lower speed fans that are new and plug those into the motherboard, get the grills on, and let's shove some GPUs in here. Oh yeah, You know what that means. RGB. It adds hash rate. Anyway, I've got some like pretty garbage bundled Montech case fans in here. They are RGB ring fans. Next up, I'm going to be putting an mSATA SSD into this bad boy so I can boot off of that. And then we'll do a dry boot with a power supply just to make sure everything's still working. I did test this once. But yeah, it's been a little bit. So we'll get all that done up. I do have a VGA to HDMI converter, so we'll make sure everything works on the board. Everything's been okay, but everything's been very, very corroded, so it's needed a lot of wiggling back and forth. Even USB has been a little tricky to get working. So anyway, let's do that real quick. Throw the mSATA in there, get a power supply over here, and let's dry fire it. So I got these 2,400 watt mining server case power supplies from MeterBox. I assume you can hear it, but that noise is coming from a power supply with the switch in the off position. Gonna have to do the resistor mod to that bad boy. Check out that RGB though, huh? Wow, what a terrible noise. Well, she booted right up. Let's handle this real quick so you can hear me again. It actually looks like a very simple but reasonably well-made power supply, so okay. Anyway, here's the fan. It's a Yalan fan, D60BV-12, half amp, 12 volts, so 6 watts. It's actually quite a bit less skookum than the fans in those newer Vitretus, but I'm going to spin it around and resistor mod it. So we'll see. Hopefully I don't end up cooking anything, but same process. Got a big old bag of resistors. I'm not going to be running much power through this, so I'd rather have it nice and quiet. God, it shows how little attention I'm paying today. I always cut this into the ground side, so worst that can happen really is just making the fan go full speed. I cut this one on the positive lead, so whoops. I have to use a lot of Captain tape on this bad boy. Alright, the solder's done. I wrapped it in Captain tape here, flatten out the little points, and get as much of this jacket back on as we can. Ready for this? Oh, that's so nice. And it still moves so much air. So you could run this indoors now. Also, man, they've got, looks like 10 PCIe cords. Let's see if we get a signal out of it with that converter. We might. All right, let's throw some GPUs in here and I guess see what happens. I don't know, I'm curious. 6600s are very low power cards, but this thing is tight. It is tight. Well, a couple of these are a sensationally tight fit, but they all have fin stacks pointed the correct direction, and I put the better heat sinks on the outside. Typically, I have hotter temperatures on the outside edges. The CPU has a seized fan, but I am pretty confident that thing could run passively. So let's try firing it up and see, A, if it'll register AMD cards, B, if it registers all 8, C, if these even pass through power correctly, because I bought these cables separately, and D, if we can get it to mine, and E, if they overheat. Well, it had me scared a little bit. Took forever to boot, but I think that's because this had never been powered up with AMD GPUs in it before, and the first time you boot a Hive install with AMD GPUs, it has to install the CUDA kernel and everything. So anyway, it does indeed show all 8, so let me pop an overclock on it real quick once the laptop boots up here, and we'll see how the temperatures are. It's pretty chilly down here, but still. Alright, so it's mining. And it's drawing, I don't actually know what the base power was. Let's go back a bit. We'll say 84 watts is the base power. So 457 minus 80, so this thing's drawing like 380 watts maybe. That's pretty good. It does still have 8 GPUs in it, and it's doing 4 gigahash on a lithium. So that's, I mean, it's one of the lighter algorithms, maybe the lightest algorithm you can currently run that's relatively good at yielding coin right now. So I'll let this run for a little bit, check the temperatures, check fan speeds, and then maybe I'll throw it on flux real quick just so we can I don't know, get a handle for something that's a little bit more power intensive to see how the temperatures are. But this thing would obviously be in a much, much hotter ambient environment. It's about 70 degrees Fahrenheit where this sits right now, so that's very chilly. But yeah, you can see our full dashboard right there. You can see it's a Chief River Intel 2017 BIOS. This thing almost certainly had P106s in it for a very long time. I don't know, it's still chugging away. So let's see what it looks like with the lights off, should we? Nice. Nice. Neat. Anyway, yeah, we'll let her chooch a little bit with the lithium. Then I'll put in some flux OCs and see what she'll do on flux. Alright, I think that's long enough to reach steady state. So it looks like we got 51 degrees. The further down we go here, and then 46 up here. Still pretty darn chilly. I'm actually going to shut it all the way down because I want to see what the resting power actually is. And then we're going to throw it on flux. So looks like our resting power, there's a cat meowing, about 83, 84 watts. Yeah, it's about right. So let's throw her on flux now. All right, so for flux, power is pretty much leveled off here. We'll call it 807 watts, which equates to, what was it, 80 watts resting? So 720 watts for 233 souls. These OCs are for crappy 6600 XTs, so there's a lot of room for tweaking left. I was noticing that the CPU was up to 90 degrees Celsius before the cards spun up, so that little fan, you might want to put a blow-through card on the number 1 slot. It is worth noting these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the hardware and the software. But yeah, these crappy generic 1-speed case fans are not enough for, what was it, 720 watts of power consumption. So you can see at 80% fan, we're up to too hot on that one. So I'm actually going to swap the flight sheet back to a lithium just so I don't kill anything. But yeah, I probably will have to get one of those little $10 PWM controllers that takes a single PCIe. Although, goodness, I don't have a spare one of those inside the case, of course. So I guess maybe I'll just find some higher CFM 120mm fans that aren't super loud if I run them at 100%. One of these big old high-speed fans would create quite a ruckus. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with this case yet. I could just put high-speed fans in it and just put it somewhere where nobody's around, so I don't care about the noise. Or I could continue to run a really low-power algorithm with these fans and low-power cards. Or I could run fewer cards to give them more room to breathe. Again, I'm not really sure yet, but I did want to check it out and see kind of how it performed to get a better feel for them. And for $75 shipped, it's, you know, whatever. It's worth it, I guess. But man, you can't put high power cards in these things. Even with some bigger fans in a hot environment, I think these would get properly warm. But anyway, that was my fun little stupid build for the day. Testing out this insanely cheap as-is server case, which does work okay. It's just I really wish I had the ATX version for many reasons. But yeah, we quieted this right down. Even when it was running 800 and something watts a load, still, you know, ice cold air coming out of this fan. So the efficiency looks like it is 90 plus. All right, guys, that's it for today. Catch you guys soon. All right, actually, one more thing. Look at that. Boy, that could use a repaste, huh? Here's the model of the fan that has failed, if you need one of those. And yeah, there's the back side of that heatsink. Not much to this bad boy. Anyway, I'm gonna repaste that, see if a fan's cheap. If it is, I'll get a fan. If not, I'm actually gonna just leave the outer shroud off because I think the airflow will be quite a bit better like this. But this looks like a pretty standard form factor, so maybe I can just get a heatsink fan replacement for this. That's not too much money. I don't want to sink a bunch of money into this because it was running okay once the GPUs picked up in speed, but I think if I put the blow-through Hellhound, I thought that blew through. Shoot. a blow-through card would help a lot right there. So maybe I'll grab an RTX and throw it in there. But yeah, there's that, there's the compute board. Well, before putting the finishing touches on this week's video abomination, I now have 12 more, well, total, I guess. You saw 8 of these in the previous part of this video, but I got 4 more Hellhound non-XT, there's a cat meowing, non-XT Hellhounds. So I have a total of 12 cards, and it feels really silly to not have these mining. So I'm actually going to grab my old Veta 8 GPU frame, throw a mining expert board in it, and throw all these in there at the same time, because I want to mine with 6600s. They're some of the most efficient GPUs out there. So they don't perfectly fit in the 8 GPU frame, obviously, but they fit well enough where I mined with 12 AMD cards in it for quite a while with good results. So let me get the frame out, get these out of the way, and put that kind of thing together, get a PSU, and yeah, let's see what we can get done here. I forgot all my risers at my garage. Oops. It's on pause while I go get those. Dang it. This has to be one of the most ghetto things I have put together when it comes to mining, and there's, full disclosure, no way it's staying this way. The whole thing, I don't have the right Allen wrench size down here, so the whole thing is too low over here, forcing the butts of the cards up too much. I ended up having to run the riser on the 12th card on SATA, because I ran out of splitters. But, I don't know. Let's see if it fires up. Some things are moving, some things are not. Worrying. Looks like this guy's no chooching. Potentially this card too. We'll see. I'm not optimistic about all the riser cards either. These all came from Nerdgearz, and they were like 20 cents a piece. So, we'll see. See if it boots into Hive. You'd never guess by looking at it, but that hung. So I had to clear the CMOS. Now it has no GPUs connected at all. Yup. Oh, great. I have to recover again. I need to reboot until this is for sure working. Well, that's an anticlimax, but I concede. There's too many unknowns in this situation, but it is not happy. So, back in the cheapo server case, 8 of these go. Back to square one. I did put a couple of Noctua server fans, and then also just... can't remember what that's from, but it's a higher airflow fan, so we'll check the temperatures on all these. Then I'm also running 4 Hellhound and 4 Fighter 6600, so I left the XTs out of it just for easier overclocking. But let's boot her up and check thermals, I guess. I'll put the lid back on. Well, there we have it, 332 minus 84, so this thing's drawing like 250 watts, mining a lithium at 3.486 gigahash. And yeah, you can see our cards are showing in software 20 to 25 watts for 400-ish megahash each. These things rock. So if we calculate it out, 250 divided by 8, they're drawing about 31 watts a piece, including CPU and power supply overhead. So probably less than 30 watts a piece on a lithium. I really do like these cards a lot. 6600s are so underrated.